What's going on, guys? Boss6 here, back to your video, and today we're going to do my NFL Week 10 predictions. Sorry. Well, at least Week 9, we actually got some good football games for once. Hooray! And oh boy, we're going to be having some doozies here, folks, and well, looks like we may be seeing what teams are looking to be good in the playoffs or looking to be bad, and some that are just flat, they're just not to be fine. So, with that being said, we're going to kick off. Oh boy, we have a barn burner for you folks. We are about to witness one of the greatest games of all time between the Carolina Panthers and the Chicago Bears. A game that will commence one of the greatest things in NFL history. Tank Bowl. This game's going to be really bad. Al Michaels might actually die watching this game because good God almighty. So, Panthers, they came off of a pretty bad game against the Colts. You know, Bryce Young, he has not looked good this past year. And it's not necessarily all his fault. Like, the throws he makes are very questionable, but it's everything else around him. He doesn't really have anyone to help him in a way. And it doesn't help that they're going to be probably trading people soon and they're going to be tanking for the draft. Meanwhile, the Bears, they're just waiting for the season to be over. They did come off of a pretty competitive game against the Saints. And Taysom Badgett actually didn't look that bad, not like he did the week beforehand against the Chargers. But still, the Bears are in turmoil. They do have Montez Sweat, and they did give him a little extension to at least help out that O-line a little bit. But I feel like it's too little too late. Who's going to win? I don't know, but in the end, we all lose. I am probably going to have to go with the Bears with this one, only because they do have some names on their roster. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Panthers pull it out either. But I'm going to go with the Bears with this one. Next up, we have another Frankfurt, Germany game. We have the Indianapolis Colts versus the New England Patriots. Oh man, if this happened about maybe 10 years ago, it would have been Peyton Manning and Tom Brady going at NFC Championship games. But except we have Gardner Minshew and Mac Jones. Yeah, this game is probably not going to be all that great. Now there are rumors swirling around that maybe if the Patriots lose this game, maybe Bill Belichick might actually get canned after being with the team for what 22, 23 years. So I don't know, but it may happen because things are going to be changing in New England, and nobody's going to feel bad for them. The Colts, they came off pretty impressive victory against the Panthers, like I just said. Kenny Moore had a really good game because he got 2 picks off of Bryce Young. And while Gardner Minshew is no world beater or anything, he's still a respectable QB in his own right. Meanwhile, the Patriots, they looked terrible against the Commanders. Mac Jones, he looked all right for the first half. Of the second half, he just completely fell off the map. And it doesn't help that J.C. Jackson is taking a mental reset. And yeah, it's not looking that good at all. I'm going to have to go with the Colts. I think they're just an overall more structured team. And oh boy, it's going to be really, really, really ugly. I'm willing to bet. But I'm going to go with the Colts. Following that, you have a really interesting game here considering how both teams did last week. You have the Houston Texans versus the Cincinnati Bengals. The Texans, C.J. Stroud is an absolute stud. That performance last week against Tampa Bay, he's already set now to be probably the best rookie QB of all time. 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, almost threw for 500 yards with a completion or with a passer rating, I think, or a completion rating of 71%. That's damn good right there. And not to mention, he led a game-winning drive. Texans, they may be a little bit of football help, but they're sneakily looking like a wild card team. And not to mention, their kicker actually got hurt, and the running back actually made a field goal. And guess what? They still won in the end. It's absolutely ridiculous. So Texans, they don't have a lot of standout names on their roster, but you know what? They're starting to look like a respectable football team, especially after that performance last week. Meanwhile, Cincinnati, they manhandled Buffalo from left, right, center. The game looked close at the final end, but that defense was all over Josh Allen and the Bills. Joe Burrow had one of the best first quarters or the first halves of any QB. He was literally perfect that whole game. And Burrow was looking like the Burrow of old and not the Burrow of whatever the hell he was his first couple games. This should be a good game. Honestly, this should be a really, really, really good game. I am going to have to go with the Bengals only because their defense is better. But I would expect Houston to make it a little bit competitive again, especially coming after what happened last week. But I am going to have to go with Cincy with this one. Following that, you have the New Orleans Saints versus the Minnesota Vikings. The Saints, like I said with the Bears, came off a pretty impressive victory with the Bears. Taysom Hill looked really damn good, and the offense slowly getting a little bit better. They're actually starting to show up this time. Now, granted, it was against the Bears, and the week beforehand, who did they play the week beforehand? I actually can't remember. I don't know how they're divisional. I don't know how they're running the division. Maybe that goes to show you how terrible the AFC South is. But Derek Carr start to look a little better. Alvin Kamara's all right. It's just Pete Carmichael's play calling is really, really, really bad. And Dennis Allen's not really doing a well enough job as a head coach. Meanwhile, the Vikings, they've gone through so much hell that you can honestly respect it. Picking up Josh Dobbs after acquiring him from the Arizona Cardinals, literally knew no one on his team, and yet somehow after their backup QB, Jaren Hall, got taken out with a brutal concussion, they still won the game against Atlanta. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And Vikings, they're in football hell, but you know what? If they're going to go down, they're going to go down fighting. Honestly, I'm going to have to go with Minnesota on this one. I'm just in shock at how the Vikings are doing well. Now, if they manage to go into the playoffs, they're probably going to get eliminated first round. But you know what? You can't help but respect how the Vikings are doing this year. Again, you lost Kirk Cousins. Justin Jefferson's out with an injury. And yet somehow you still won against Atlanta. So maybe that tells you more about the Falcons than the Vikings, but I mean, a win's a win. So I'm going to have to go with the Vikings just because I don't really trust the Saints in any capacity. Oh, boy. This looks good on paper. We have an AFC North battle. We have the Cleveland Browns versus the Baltimore Ravens. Two teams did impressive last week. The Browns made no mistakes against the Cardinals, butchering them from left, right, and center, 27-0. Groper Cleveland, a.k.a. Deshaun Watson, he actually looked good, and he didn't look terrible. The defense just laid waste to the Clayton Tune Cardinals, and it was no contest by the first half, essentially. Meanwhile, the Ravens, they put on one of the best performances, if not the best performance of the whole week, in my personal opinion. Laying waste to the Seahawks, 37-3. It was a massacre from start to finish. Lamar Jackson is looking phenomenal. OBJ is trying to make himself a little bit relevant, but not by a whole lot. And that defense is scary. That is one of the best defenses of the entire league right now. Who's going to win? Honestly, it depends on which offense is going to show up because, you know, Cleveland has a good offense, but they just don't have a good quarterback at this point. I'm going to have to go with the Ravens on this one because Lamar is showing that he can still be an MVP quarterback and still be a franchise quarterback. It's just that there are sometimes the offense just decides not to show up, especially against the game against the Colts and the Steelers. If their offenses show up against a really damn good defense, then I'm pretty sure the Ravens are going to win this one. So this could be a good game, especially considering the two defenses, but I'm going to have to go with the Ravens with this one. Next up, we have two teams that just came off their bye week. We have the San Francisco 49ers versus Jacksonville Jaguars. Like I said, San Fran, they just came off of a bye week after losing 3 straight in a row. Brock Purdy was taken out with a concussion. Deebo Samuel was hurt. Trent Williams was working with an injury, and so was Christian McCaffrey. With that being said, I'm pretty sure they can bounce back and get back on a hot winning streak. Their offense and their defense is still really damn good. Their problem mainly this year is their secondary. Their secondary and their pass rushing and basically like the backfield. They need to work on that because if not, you're going to get ran over by Jacksonville because Jacksonville has a really damn good rushing game. Again, Jacksonville, they came off of their bye week as well. They're running it at AFC South. And while there's a little bit of competition with the AFC South, considering what just happened with Houston last week, Jacksonville, they're still in the league. They are just frustrating to watch because they should, by all shapes and sizes, be destroying teams with their offense, but they really want to keep it close for some weird reason. I don't know why. Trevor Lawrence is still battling a little bit of an injury. Travis Etienne is still doing really damn good. Christian Kirk, and especially Jalen Ramsey. Or not Jalen Ramsey, Calvin Ridley. I'm sorry, I got confused with the Dolphins player. With that being said, this should be a good game on paper, but I think 49ers are eventually going to win this only because I think their defense is just stronger than Jacksonville's. But this should be a pretty fun game from start to finish. Next up, we have we have the Battle of the Souths. We have the Tennessee Titans versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Titans came off of a pretty close game against the Steelers. Will Levis had a really good game. Unfortunately, he threw a game-ending interception that did, hurt him a little bit. But he drove the Titans down the field, and he's going to be starting against Tampa Bay. So, Will Levis, he's starting to look really good. I'm not going to assume he's going to be a franchise QB because we all assume that about every other QB that they draft, and look what happens there. So, I'm not going to do that just yet. Just wait to see how he does at the rest of the year. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay, they had a really good showing against Houston. But the big problem is that Todd Bowles cost them that game. They decided to take a timeout when they shouldn't have and left 10 seconds running off the clock. But they didn't do that, and they eventually led Houston to win that game. I'm starting to believe Todd Bowles is really becoming the new version of Dick LeBeau. Great offensive coordinator, terrible head coach. With that being said, I'm actually going to go with the Titans on this one. Why? Because I want chaos in my life. Tampa Bay still has a really damn good defense, and their offense is still pretty damn good. It's just Baker Mayfield's been very iffy for the past few weeks. Like, they were looking really great at the beginning, and then they've really been tapering off in the past few weeks. You could say the same thing with the Titans, but that's because mainly Ryan Tannehill and Malik Willis. Let's see how Will Levis will do in this third start. I think he'll do all right, so I'm going to go with the Titans pulling off a victory in this one. Oh boy, we have the Battle of the Clickbait members. We have Tom Grassi's the Green Bay Mud-Loving Packers versus Urinating Trees Pittsburgh Steelers. They're going to Super Bowl. I'm such a damn nerd. I'm fully aware of it. Yeah, the Packers and the Steelers. Well, unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers no longer with the team, and Ben Roethlisberger is now retired. So, no, we won't get a big game matchup like we did at Super Bowl 45. Packers, they came off a pretty impressive victory over the Rams, even though that game was so damn boring. If you watched my live stream, I was nearly crying because of how boring that game was. Jordan Love had an alright game. There was just so many sloppy turnovers and a lot of questionable calls that entire game. Meanwhile, the Steelers, I don't know how the hell they keep winning. I honestly don't. They are one of the worst 5-3 teams, despite the fact Kenny Pickett would play terrible for the first 3 quarters, and then when the fourth quarter happens, he turns into John Elway. I don't understand. Who's going to win this one? It's going to be an ugly game. It's going to be a really ugly game. I have a feeling the Steelers are going to pull it out because they've been pulling victories out of their ass for the past, season? Basically ever since the season started. But, man, it's going to be a pretty ugly game in my opinion. But I'm going to have to go with the Steelers with this one. Next up, we have the Detroit Lions versus the Los Angeles Chargers. The Lions came off of their bye week after smoking the Raiders the week beforehand. And once again, I said this before, I say this again. If your team is banged up, a bye week is going to help you. Look what happened with Cincy. I think if they get David Montgomery back, they're going to start putting up really good numbers. And that defense is one of the best defenses of the entire league. Meanwhile, the Chargers, they're still in football hell. I mean, yeah, you beat the Jets, but that's basically a gimme win for you. Not Trevor Lawrence. Justin Herbert's looking really damn good. Austin Eckler and especially Keenan Allen's doing really damn good. Just their defense. Their defense has not really been all that good against top tier defenses. And yeah, you got a lot of pressure on Zach Wilson, but that's because Zach Wilson is Zach Wilson. So who's going to win this? It's going to be the Lions, in my opinion. They just are they're just a more consistent team, and they just need to prove that they can be a little more competitive when you're going up against very competitive teams, because they need to start doing that. And I'm not going to call them frauds. I'm not going to call them any of that. They just need to step up their game a little bit when it comes to teams with a winning record. And I can say that for almost any other team in existence. But to me, they just need to find their niche, and hopefully they will against the Chargers. Next up, this one's basically going to be a free win for them. You have the Atlanta Falcons and the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah, Falcons choked last week. No shock. Arthur Smith, I don't know what the hell you're doing, dude. Like, you seem like a likable guy, and thank God that Desmond Ridder didn't play. But my God, your play calling's very questionable. Like, you are making some very dumb decisions, my good sir. Again, you look like a nice guy, and you have a very respectable mustache. But, man, you are making some very questionable calls. And sooner or later, Arthur Blake's going to get tired of it, and he's going to kick your ass to the curb. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, they got smacked, but Kyler Murray's going to be coming back. So let's see how he does his first game back, especially coming off of that MCL injury last year. With that being said, I'm going to have the Falcons win this one, but I wouldn't be shocked that the Cardinals actually pull off a victory in this one, because I think since Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury is no longer with the team, I think Kyler Murray's going to have that confidence back in him. But unfortunately, I feel like it's going to be a little too late, and they may be moving on from him. So I'm going to go with the Falcons with this one. Oh boy, next one's not going to be good at all. You have the New Jersey Giants versus the Dallas Cowboys. Oh, God almighty. You want to talk about a team that has an identity crisis? Look no further than the Giants this season. They have looked horrible for the past few weeks. They've been looking terrible ever since the season started, ironically, against Dallas. Daniel Jones, out with an injury. He's out for the year, torn ACL on a non-contact play. They got smoked by the Raiders, and it's ugly. It's really, really, really ugly. Not to mention Saquon Barkley's dealing with an ankle injury, and yeah, this team is just in absolute turmoil at this point. Meanwhile, Dallas, they came off of a really good game against Philly. Now, granted, there were some really bad calls in that game, and Philly was trying really, really, really hard to let Dallas win in the end, but eventually it wasn't enough. Yes, there were some very questionable calls in that game, but Dallas was given a lot of opportunities, but not capitalizing on them. Especially the fact that they had a chance to drive down the field, but they kept getting penalties called back to them. But I will say, we need Dak Prescott like this. We have not seen this from Dak in a while, it feels like. We need him to have a really good game. And that's what I've been saying. Every time that Dallas is, putting up all these points against bad teams, Dak has done nothing because it's mainly the defense doing all that stuff. So, now that we finally got that, I'm pretty confident that Dak should be doing that going forward, because I'll be honest, Dallas is sort of having a bit of a light schedule this year, but, they need to be a little more competitive, especially with teams against Philly and the Chiefs and etc. This will be a free win for Dallas. I don't expect the Giants to do anything. They'll probably just lay down the field and die, because that's basically what they should be doing, because this year has been terrible for them. So, yeah, I'm going with Dallas with this one. Next up, you have the Washington Commanders versus the Seattle Seahawks. Commanders came off a very impressive victory against the Patriots. Sam Howell, he did throw a pretty bad end zone interception, but he made it up for it. And he's looking pretty solid so far. Yeah, he looks like Fat Baker Mayfield, but hey, that didn't stop Baker Mayfield for throwing good touchdowns. They have good talent on their team, but unfortunately, Chase Young's no longer with them, and no longer is Montez Sweat. So there's some big holes missing on their defense right there. Meanwhile, Seattle, they got rocked last week, but I think they could pick that momentum up and they could still maintain status as getting competitive with the NFC 8 or NFC West. With that being said, I'm going to have to go with the Seahawks with this one. Washington may put up a respectable fight, but I'm going to go with Seattle overall. Oh boy. Then, for the Sunday night primetime game, we're going to have ourselves a classic here, folks. We have the New York Jets versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Oh, good God. Yeah, Jets, this season has gone so terrible for the Jets. I don't even know how they're 500 in my personal opinion. I really, really, really don't understand. Zach Wilson's looking terrible. It's, I just don't know what to think about the Jets. I don't even know what to say about them at this point. They're just the Jets. They are in permanent hell for all I know. Meanwhile, Raiders, they did phenomenal against the Giants. Aiden O'Connell did really damn good. Max Crosby was putting on a really damn good game. They're looking damn good. And not to mention Antonio Pierce is bringing life back to the Raiders because Josh McDoucheface is now gone from the team. And also, one more thing about Josh that he needs to grow up about, and that's coming from me who doesn't like to grow up sometimes. This dude got into a fit because Antonio Pierce was talking trash about the Patriots and their perfect season and how the Giants destroy their hopes and dreams of it. And Josh McDaniels said to Antonio Pierce, if this is true, by the way, he said, don't ever talk to the Patriots like that again. Dude, your head is so far up Bill Belichick's ass, it's not even funny. Like, you have it so far up there, you probably knew what Belichick had for breakfast last week. It is bad. It is really, really, really bad. And not to mention, he stopped his kids from trick-or-treating to tell them what happened to him. Why would the kids care? Why would anyone else care? Because no one likes Josh McDaniels. No one. No one likes Josh McDaniels. So yeah, Raiders are going to win. I think, even though Davante Adams and Josh Jacobs are looking okay, I guess, they're probably going to be traded at the end of the year. And that's going to suck because I love Davante and I love Josh Jacobs, but I think the Raiders are going to go through a massive rebuild this year, or next year. So that's who I have for the Sunday night game. And for the Monday night game, we have the Denver Broncos versus the Buffalo Bills. Broncos are coming off of their bye week, and Buffalo struggled against the Bengals. They looked pretty rough. Josh Allen had a really good first half, except for a bad interception. Their offense needs work. It's very inconsistent. The running game needs to change up a bit. Their defense is still looking okay, but their secondary just needs help. Like, it feels like Kenny Dorsey feels like he doesn't know what the hell he's doing most of the time. And not to mention, Sean McDermott may be getting kicked soon. So that's who I have. Again, I love Josh Allen, and they were looking like a Super Bowl team. They should have had that run last year, and now it's looking very, very sketchy. But I'm still going to go with Buffalo because the Broncos, their defense is horrible. So I think Buffalo won't have too much of a problem dissecting it. But then again, we said that against the Jets, and look what happened there. So as long as Buffalo doesn't make one too many mistakes, I think they're going to win against the Broncos. So, folks, that is it for my NFL predictions for Week 10. Who do you think is going to win? Let me know in the comment section below. Make sure you guys leave a like, leave a comment, tap that big red subscribe button, and tap the bell so when I upload, you guys will be notified. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and most importantly, join the herd. Talk in the next video. Peace out.